Bomberman is a franchise that was close to me at one point. Being a kid with a DS flashcard, I would pretty much play any game that was included on it. And yeah, there was a ton of Bomberman games included. While I would love to talk all about all of the ones I played, Land Touched My Beloved, there's one that likely is, one of the more forgotten ones, and that's Bomberman 2. Not to be confused with Bomberman 2 on the NES, so why is it named that? Well, in Japan it's known as Custom Battler Bomberman, which is a far better name if you ask me. But for the sake of it, I'll just stick with Bomberman 2 for the rest of this video. You know it's a DS one anyways. Now, Bomberman has always been in the middle when it comes to popularity. Like, if you ask me at least. I'm saying that a lot. Like, yeah, people sure do know who he is, but the extent is just very basic. Many don't really know the extent of this little guy and the hidden gems that lie beneath, like this game. But why is that? Well, this game wasn't released in the US for one. Son of a... Bomberman games aren't really known for having intricate or deep stories, and this is no different. Though, for this franchise, or at least for its norms, it's certainly unique. This entire game takes place in like a futuristic city of sorts, at least I assume it is, and where a virus has hacked the power grid, putting the entire city in danger as a result. To counter this, the antivirus called the Bomberman is created, and well, you probably know the rest. From here to simple pointing to point beat thing. No, not like that. Yeah, like that. Anyways, once you defeat the big bad virus, that's pretty much it. Though if you 100% the game, you get an ending where the virus is gone for good, and the antivirus, Bomberman, can rest as he is no longer needed. Sure, it's a bit edgier or sillier than what Bomberman usually is, but it's not like a total deviation from the franchise. Plus, it was the late 2000s, this sort of aesthetic, like, being edgy or grittier, kind of dominated gaming back then. It might be silly now, but then again, there have been lower lows. Enough of that though, why don't we finally talk about the real meat and bones. So, Bomberman's gameplay is fairly simple. Oftentimes it's grid based and you really have to just use your bombs to get rid of obstacles and enemies. Though you do want to make sure that you're not in range of your bombs unless you want to self-destruct, which happens way more times than I would like to admit to me. Anyways, in Bomberman 2 it remains about the same, but there's a shit ton of other things to account for, like the various power-ups. These come in many varieties, like increase your bomb count, firepower, which is just bomb range, and among other various things like speed and other types of bombs too. I like how I just called packs or something because cyber or whatever. At least the game is sticking to a theme. But what sets Bomberman 2 DS apart from the usual campaign you expect from the series is that it has a shit ton of variety going for it. For every zone there's 10 levels, with the 5th one being a mini boss with one of the viruses and then the 10th one being a big boss fight. But the thing that really sells this for me is that the levels each have something to do. They're usually split up into different sections with an objective for each section. It can be all sorts of things and not all of them were winners, but a level design keeps things interesting enough to the point where it's engaging. It helps that they made it so enemies can only damage you via their attacks, so you can totally just run past them if you need to. Another thing this game adds is ranks, which are, well, grades. As far as I know, they only really matter if you're aiming for full completion, which unlocks the true ending, as mentioned before. It's personally not my thing, but the incentive is nice. But there's one more thing that this game adds: armor. Since this whole game basically takes place inside a huge database or whatever, you already know this, it's an excuse to have cool armor for Bomberman. You see, during the levels there's ample opportunities to find armor parts during the level, usually hidden somewhere in the levels, so exploration is encouraged. The coolest thing about this feature is that you can mix and match parts, because each part can have their own ups and downs, lowering certain stats and increasing certain stats. So really, it's a matter of what fits your personal needs. It is worth knowing that Bomberman does have a level here, and you basically increase these by playing the game. The more you level up, the more and better equipment you can use. See, this game was called Custom Battler Bomberman for a reason. Man, that is a mouthful when you think about it. Also, another thing to note about these armors is that these are like your permanent stats. Those power-ups I mentioned earlier are only temporary. Once you beat the level, they're gone. So yeah, basically there's just nothing more than a boost, while the armor is like your base stats. Anyways, I also really like some of the designs for these armors, though some of them do look too busy for my liking. It's worth knowing that the Japanese version of this game also has some exclusive costumes that are funny if you ask me. It's a neat little cosmetic in the end. Of course, story mode isn't the only thing this game has to offer, because there's also a multiplayer mode. Two of them actually. The first one is the versus mode, which is basically putting your barman from the story mode against other people's barmen for their story modes. It's a really cool mode, and I wish it wasn't restricted to just local play, because finding people in person to play this mode in a game that's never released in the States? Yeah, good luck. The other battle mode is the good old battle pack, or battle mode as it's called here. Whatever, I probably butchered the name. This is basically the multiplayer that everyone knows Bomberman for. It comes with 20 or so maps, multiple game modes, and as per DS standard, up to 8 player multiple. And because download play exists, only the host really needs the game to play this mode locally. But addition of an online mode is much appreciated, even if it's super hard to connect to DS Online if you're not using an emulator. Sure, it's limited to 4 players due to constraints I assume, but hey, nice to have it. Now graphically, this game looks pretty good. It should be known that I am a sucker for sprites, and while 3D stuff on the DS is charming, sprites always just age better, and this is no exception. While Bomberman himself looks a bit lanky, everything else has a nice amount of detail to it, not to mention how animated the characters are. And I really like the level varieties here. Sure, it is weird how all of these different environments are just like in a huge database, power grid or whatever, but it's technology, better not to question it. Regardless, it's a really great game visually. Big fan of the various pieces of 2D artwork that you see throughout the game as well. That's a nice touch. I mean, you expected this, didn't you? Anyways, I really love the soundtrack. It has a more of an edgy and grungy feel compared to other games, but given the tone of this game, it works. And of course, the usual battle team addition in the battle pack, which is, you know, always welcome, it's a staple. Bomberman 2 DS is basically one of the best Bomberman games, if you ask me at least. It's got a pretty beefy story mode, the standard multiplayer and a versus mode with your story mode progress. What's not to like here? Sure, the whole setting of the game may be a bit too edgy or silly for this franchise, but it's not too distracting once you start playing the game. After all, it's Bomberman at its core, right? If you can get your hands on this game, I'd highly recommend it. Even as a starting point, it's a pretty good pick. It's just a major shame that this game's community is basically non-existent because, you know, it skipped the US release. At least being released in Europe means that there's an English translation, but it would have been nice to see this game with more people in the community. Well, on second thought, there is one way to make that happen.
Motherfucker! Oh hey look, a game fax that did my job for me.